Okay, content of this meeting is being sent to YouTube. We're live. Okay, let me mute. Okay, can you still hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, but I can't hear you because I muted my computer. All right, so mute. If I turn off, can you still hear me okay? All right, if I close my YouTube, did it? Okay, it looks like it's still going. Let me double check. Live. Yep, still says I'm live. Perfect. I don't think I can mute. Oh, I can. Perfect. Okay. Welcome to the Metamorphosis Project podcast. All right. First time going live on YouTube, so this is going to be fun and interesting. How are you doing today?
It's great. It's fantastic. I love it. This is self-care in practice right here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we did come up with some little intros. So we're going to read our intros because we put the work into them and we want to express who we are. All right, so welcome to the Metamorphosis Project podcast, where transformation, self-care, and healing meet real talk with a sprinkle of humor. I'm your host, Tina Eichenberg. I'm an energy healer and a self-care coach, certified in everything from the emotion code to laughter yoga. Yep, because laughter is a very good healing process. I help people to release emotional baggage, shift limiting beliefs, and discover that healing doesn't have to be all serious all the time, that it can actually be quite fun.
And I'm Eva Zobian Wolf. I'm the founder and CEO of Eva Z Wellness. I'm a mind-body specialist, nurse, adaptive yoga therapist who spent over 2 decades in the medical field. So I know a little something about stress and how to kick it to the curb. I work with individuals that are navigating chronic illness, pain, and mobility challenges. And I'm on a mission to help nurses avoid burnout so that they can reclaim their well being with self care tools, things like adaptive yoga, Reiki, mindfulness practices. So basically, if you're feeling stuck, I've got your back, literally.
And together in this episode today, we're going to be diving into trauma sensitive and trauma informed approaches to healing, breaking down complex topics and some practical tips. We're going to have an honest conversation and hopefully we'll have a few laughs along the way. Because let's face it, again, healing is a serious business. Trauma is a serious business, but it doesn't have to be all serious all the time. So whether you're looking to heal emotional wounds, find balance, or just figure out how to stop stressing over the things that you can't control, we're here for you. So let's get started on this journey of trauma, being trauma informed and being trauma sensitive to those around us who are navigating through it. It's a difficult task.
Well, and one of the things that in a lot of my training, the idea has been every single person that we know, that we work with, has either experienced or is experiencing some type of trauma. And trauma informed gives us that knowledge of how to recognize when somebody is activated, when somebody is not utilizing coping mechanisms that may be helping them. And then trauma sensitive is a way for us to show up and be a brave space for anybody that needs it.
Yeah.
With the idea that, yeah, everybody has the potential to get triggered in a conversation.
They do. And for people who say, oh, I had a great childhood. I there wasn't any trauma in my childhood. There was trauma in your childhood. You may not remember it, you may not recognize it as trauma, but a trauma for a 1 or 2 year old is completely different than a 30-year-old. And it's very difficult for some of us to see that throwing your child up in the air and scaring them could be trauma. It could be traumatic for them. I mean, I threw my kids up in the air and I had no idea what I was doing. It was just our parents did it to us. We saw other adults doing it to their kids. The kids would laugh, but there's that split second where you've let go of them and they're falling back to earth at a high speed of velocity. And yeah, you catch them, but they don't know you're going to catch them.
Well, and I think you and I are pretty close in age as well, too. So we're kind of part of that feral generation where
Yep.
we were just thrown outside and said, figure it out, but whatever's going on, you're not coming back into the
Yep.
house until we're ready to have you come in and either eat dinner or start getting ready for bed.
Yeah. Yeah. Come in when the street lights are on. Yeah. Our parents didn't
Exactly.
know what we were doing. I mean, there were so many things like that new trend that's going around, just listen, don't judge. Gosh, if I did that with my parents, they would find out so, oh wow. And the trauma that I caused myself by doing the things that I now know I shouldn't have been doing because I was 9, 10, 11, 12.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my burnout is a direct result of the fact that I was working in a high stress environment, but I was working in a high stress environment with a nervous system that had no coping mechanisms.
Right, right,
I
right.
was calm and quiet with, or calm and patient with my patients. Maybe I was that way with some of my coworkers, but when I got home, I was a flaming bitch.
Yeah. I was with my anxiety and depression. I cried a lot. I mean, you know the commercial where the Maytag, the mom gets the refrigerator, that would send me into tears.
Same.
And it was because we stuffed that trauma down. And trauma isn't just it's not just a buzzword. Trauma is something that happens to your body when you've gone through experiences. And
Absolutely.
when you think of those experiences again, you're re-traumatizing yourself. So on an energetic level, you may have gone through this experience when you were 6 or 7 years old. Let's say you were chased down the street by older kids on your bike and you fell and you were incredibly scared and it's like the saber-toothed tiger is coming after you. But every time you think about that incident, you're reincorporating that trauma. So now you have, let's say you thought about it a dozen times over the years. You now have a dozen different layers of trauma from one experience. And then you can't walk down the street in a park or by yourself because you're afraid someone's coming up behind you.
That's a really great point because a lot of times people think, well, I had a happy childhood. I've never been to war. Nothing bad has happened to me. And they think I don't have enough to consider this a trauma. But those memories of things, and it can be something as simple as that one aunt that every time you saw her, she looked at you and went, "Oh, you're still wearing your hair." And it's I wish you would just find a way to wear your hair where it's
Right.
more flattering. Like you've got these facial features where you would be so much prettier if you just did something to work with the way that your face is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
there's always there's an aunt, the grandparent, there's somebody that always said something that made you feel eh.
Yeah.
And that sticks with you. It could be
It
they only
does.
said it one time, but it sticks with you, and it colors every single decision you make on how you wear your hair, what clothes you feel comfortable in, whether or not you go from glasses to contacts because somebody said something once about, the size of your nose or the size of your forehead or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's a trauma that, yes, builds up in the energy of your body, and it leaves this energetic
Imprint.
imprint that it's
Yeah.
just festers over
Yep.
years.
Yep. That's why
And it
I,
can
yeah. Yeah. It
and
can,
it
yeah.
can
It festers.
become
Absolutely.
we're both like,
It can become what?
it can become pain, injury, illness. It manifests in so many different ways. And we think, okay, well, I need to go to the doctor because I've got this immobility in my shoulder. I've got pain in my shoulder. I've got pain in this area of my body, when it's no. Aunt Matilda couldn't keep her thoughts to herself.
Yeah. And it also comes from people who joke about things. They come from a place of trying to be funny. And even if we as the recipient laugh it off, there's still a part of us that is like, that wasn't so funny. And people will play it off like, oh, it wasn't a big deal. No, really, it didn't bother me. Well, that's the people pleasing part of us. We don't want to have that confrontation. And so, this just goes to show with it that we can create trauma in our energy field, in our bodies, from so many different avenues. So, but what are some of the symptoms of that trauma aside from like the physical, right? There's also the mental, there's the spiritual aspects, those symptoms, those being triggered by a smell or a tone. Um, in my work as an energy worker, one of the things that I have learned is that no matter how we try to express something that we want to say, depending on what the other person has gone through is going to dictate how they take it.
Yes. And this is something that, again, coming back to trauma sensitivity, when you recognize that every single person is viewing life, the same thing that you're looking at is not the same thing that they're seeing, because you're seeing it through the lens of your experience, your knowledge, your trauma, your emotions, your energetic level. And they're seeing it in the same way. They're seeing it through the lens of their experiences and their trauma. Also, where their energetic level exists. Are they in a low vibrational energy where they're seeing everything negatively, or are they seeing things a little more high vibrationally where they're seeing things and recognizing it as something outside of themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. It just, and when it comes to that, you really have to step back and go, how can I respond to this in a more compassionate way so that now what happens when other people respond or react to you or respond to you is not your responsibility. It's not your responsibility to change how they respond to you or how they react to what you're saying or what you're doing. But it is your responsibility to put out the energy that you want to receive back. And I say that because we do need to use our words wisely. We do need to do our best to get what we want to say across in a respectful and kind manner.
Yes, absolutely. And part of doing our own work, doing our own energy healing, is in being able to see, how did I show up? Did I show up as my most kind, compassionate, and holding healthy boundaries self? Or did I respond? Actually, let me change that. Did I react from a place of anger, fear, whatever the emotion was? I literally just did this morning, where I was so caught up in the emotion of what is going on in me, and this, trying to maintain some semblance of control in my own body, that the not so the sarcastic jerk in me showed up when I was trying to have a conversation with somebody. And it wasn't directed at them, but because it was a person in that same profession as them, they kind of took, you could see they kind of took
Right.
it
Right.
personally.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how could I have been a better version of myself? And how could I have taken out the emotion, my emotion, when I was relaying the information that they wanted?
Yeah.
I would have gotten a better response from them because I clearly triggered them.
Right. Right. In the same respect, you were triggered by something else that stirred up those emotions. But
Exactly.
that's where the emotional intelligence that we are relearning um at our age, 47, 48. I'm 48. What we're relearning. So,
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know,
because I'm 54, and this whole, just because this is not the way that our parents were, this is not the way that our grandparents were, it's not an excuse for us not to do our own work, and to be kinder, to be more compassionate,
right.
not to be a doormat, but to recognize where are the spaces where I can be honest and be me, and
Hmm.
show up more in those spaces. And then in my sessions, in my classes, how do I show up and provide that space for my students and my clients?
So how do you provide that space for them?
One of the things is just recognizing that everything's an invitation. I don't know uh, what has the potential to trigger somebody. So, how do I provide that space that gives them the ability to recognize when they're feeling triggered, and then to offer them some type of practice? How do they get anchored back into their body? How do they get reconnected with their breath and their body? How do they feel that twirly chaotic energy and recognize it as a sign that I need to do something different?
Mm.
And in every class, I'm always offering people lots of options, reminding them, this is one thing that I have noticed is one of the most triggering statements that I ever say in one of my classes. You are the king or queen of your body.
Hmm.
And only you know what it feels like to be inside your body. And somebody else shouldn't be telling you how to navigate that journey,
Yep. Yeah.
because
I
that's
ask,
not the experience people have.
it's not. It's not. And that's, when I was first learning energy work, practitioner after practitioner would tell me different things of what I should feel when energy's clearing, or how I should feel after the energy clears, or how long it's going to take for the energy to clear. And it's like none of that was true for me. And every time I didn't feel what they said I should be feeling, I felt like I was doing something wrong. And
Yes.
I tell my clients the same thing. I'm like, tell me what you're feeling after this process. Once we've cleared this, I want you to pay attention to where that is coming from. Where are you feeling that sensation? Because I want them to understand what's going on with their own body. Because we've been told for so long that we don't know anything. Our parents knew what was best for us. We all know how that turned out.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And we both told our kids that to a degree as well. But I think we were more open with our kids and were more apt to, I call it negotiating, but negotiating what they thought was best for them and letting them do it as long as they were still safe.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I remember the first time that I looked at my kids and I said, whatever decision you make is the right one for you. And they looked at me and said, what?
Yeah.
Are you judging us right now? Because it feels like you're judging. And no, that's the opposite. It means you make the decision that's right for you, and it's either going to move you forward or it's going to provide you with a lesson. Maybe it's going to
Right.
do both.
Right. Right. Now we do offer guidance, of course, because we don't want them to put themselves in situations where they're going to have to work on this in 20 years.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
You're right, we're not hands off. We're just they're adults. All of our kids are adults. It's different when your kids are little. Um, but they are adults and they're they're carrying around some of those traumas that we've created before we even conceived them. And
Yes.
we don't want those to be triggered. We want them to be able to form their own identities, their own um, create balance within their own energy moving forward. Because trauma
Absolutely.
energies are inherited. They are ancestral. And it comes from just the way that we were raised. I mean, our parents didn't know what they didn't know,
Right.
right?
And
They only
it's
had the
that
knowledge that they had.
generational trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They only had the knowledge that they had, and that knowledge was passed down from generation to generation. And I believe that each generation does tend to do a little bit better than the previous generation.
That's the
But if
hope.
the yeah, here's the hope. But if they're only doing like 5% better than the previous generation, it's going to take 90 generations, not 90 years, 90 generations to eradicate whatever the trauma is that they're bringing forward. And that this word just popped, like trauma creation just popped in my head. This trauma creation that we go through in life, and it is like um let's take spanking for instance. My parents were spankers, and I was not. I was a timeout mom. But had I not been a timeout mom and I was a spanking mom, but of what going from maybe spanking with the belt to maybe just spanking with my hand, that might be 5% better. But then if my kids become spankers and they're like, well, I'm not going to spank with my hand, but I don't know, I'll spank with two fingers. It's getting a little bit better, but it's going to take quite a while before you get to that point where the next generation aren't spankers.
Yeah.
And I can't say that timeouts were any better.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there's so much that Oh my gosh, there's so many tools and resources that are available to parents now. I mean, you and I
Yeah,
both grew up in the era pre-internet. So
right,
just being able to find a community where we could learn that there was a different mentality, that there was a different way.
right.
We had to
Yeah,
seek
absolutely.
out that knowledge.
Yeah, and sometimes when you try to seek out something better, you didn't get anything better, depending on who was in your circle.
Right.
You know, if your circle of other parents were time outers or spankers, and you had that gut feeling that, oh, this really doesn't feel right. But where
And
do
you
I
got
go?
pushback for not going, for not doing
Exactly.
it. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, oh, you're gonna raise them to be you know, uh what's the word?
Soft.
Rat, soft, spoiled,
Right. Spoiled. Absolutely.
spoiled.
Absolutely.
Um, so, it's overwhelming the number of places that our trauma can come from.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I mean, just this conversation. I'm having flashbacks of things that were told to me when my first son was born, that I was holding him too much, that I
Yep.
was coddling him, that he was gonna cry his entire life because I was giving him too much love.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yep.
And so, yeah, it's these imprints, and then figuring out, okay, well, where do I feel that in my body when that comes up? And then how do I move it? How do I shift it? How do I get rid of it? How do I actually how do I transmute it?
Yes. Yes. And how do you transmute it into good energy?
Yes.
Because we all know that energy can't be destroyed.
Right.
So let's change it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just it, is having those realizations that, okay, it's not necessarily I need to get rid of it. I don't need to stuff it down, which, in the medical field, huge issue
Mhm.
because we don't deal with emotions. We just stuff them down and we cover it up with our jaded sense of humor,
Right.
um, or, alcohol or food or whatever it is,
Right.
instead of seeing it and processing it and doing that work to transform it into a more positive, more beneficial, more healthy way of seeing it and dealing with it.
Yeah, and that's why I love energy work and body movement so much is because there are so many different energies that we may not even know what it is that is truly triggering us. I was talking with a couple therapists earlier this week, and I was telling them that when I was going through this anxiety and depression, I was trying to find something to get rid of it because I wanted to get rid of those feelings. It wasn't about managing them. It wasn't about living through them. It was I wanted to get rid of what I was feeling. And I told him that the therapist I was seeing had suggested that I do CBT training. And I was like, I couldn't do it. And it was because all of the things that were contributing at the root of my anxiety and depression, regardless of what was on top of it over the last 40 years, it was stuff that had happened precognitive days before I could cognitively understand what it was that I was seeing, what I was feeling, what I was going through. And that's why energy worked so well for me, is because I had no cognitive realization, I didn't understand where it came from.
Yep, absolutely. But the energetic imprint was in your body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you've gone through the shadow work, the therapy work, you've done the logical stuff, the cognitive stuff, and there's still something there. There's still something there that you have not touched on. seek out an energy practitioner because they may be able to figure out and pull out whatever it is so that you can continue to thrive in the life that you're living.
Well, and I think that's a big component that people don't understand, that if the energy, we all have energy, like we're all energetic beings. There's energy interaction between our cells, there's energy interaction between our brain and our body. Our nerves are conducting energy. Our heart is electricity. So it's an energy process just for our heart to beat. If the energy in our body is not flowing well, it creates sticky points. And it may be a sticky point that we can feel if we're moving our body and we think, well, I can't do this or I can't bend this way. But it can also be a sticky point that's affecting an organ,
Mm-hmm.
right? So our lungs, our heart, our stomach, our intestines. Our intestines are a big area of stickiness.
Yeah,
Uh,
like
and if
22
things,
feet, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, and yeah, I mean, it's actually I think it's longer than that. I want to say it's like a couple 100 feet between the long intestine and the small intestine.
Wow.
It's actually it's I'm gonna have to Google that
Yeah,
and find out.
I'll look it up real quick while you're talking.
So when something's not functioning well, it's going to affect, when the energy is not balanced, it's going to affect the functionality of that organ, that system. But the thing is, nothing in our body works by itself. So if it's our intestines where the original energy was imbalanced, eventually that's going to cross over and carry over into our kidneys, our liver,
Mhm.
our lungs, our actual energy level, where,
Yeah.
do we have the energy? How are we sleeping? How are we eating? How are we moving? um and so finding that imbalance, we just start with, yeah, just start with, let's balance some energy. And it may take time.
Yep.
I always tell
Yeah.
my clients that, my goal is not to work with you for the next 15 years, but to get you to a place where you just need tune-ups the same way you do your car needs a tune-up
Right.
or it needs to go in for an oil change. But finding that balance, it happens in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So the small intestine is 22 feet long. The large intestine is 5 feet long.
Oh, so yeah, you were closer. Okay. You
By
were much
hundreds of feet.
closer. You were by quite a bit. So wow, yeah, like I was massively over exaggerating that.
Your your intestines have a long way to go. No, but I mean they're curled up so much that who knows, right? I mean, but yeah, I was talking to a friend the other day and we were talking about organ imbalance. And I was like, when you get your appendix removed, they say we don't need our appendix. And I'm like, well, if we don't need our appendix, why are we still born with it? Oh, because we haven't evolved enough to get rid of it. No, no, no. It only takes one to be born without it and it continue. It doesn't have to take hundreds of years for us to evolve. We still need our appendix because we're still born with it. I don't know what it does, but you're when you lose those organs, your body grieves for it.
And not just that, but we've damaged the fascia.
Yeah,
And just since when I got first went to school, got my bachelor's in physiology, the way that fascia was talked about was, it's just it's extraneous tissue. We don't know what it does. It's not important. To the last 10, 15 years, where we're understanding the scaffolding and the communication that's happening in there and the physical structure, that if we leave scar tissue in one area of the body, it's affecting, it's being translated over many different areas of the body, and it's creating that sticky point.
hmm, yeah.
So anything that we do has to be undone through movement, through energy work, through myofascial release, massage, all of those things. What they're working on is getting the body to go in and try to heal it as much as possible.
Yeah. And that takes time.
Absolutely.
What by the time clients come to see us, they've been dealing with all of this stuff for many years, 10, 20 years sometimes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not going to take 10 or 20 years to heal it, to heal from it, but it might take a year.
Yeah.
It might take 2 years. And
Yes.
it's not just the energetic and the physical work that you have to do, but you got to do the conscious work too. You got to
Absolutely.
do the mental, you got to do the self-care, you've got to learn, you've got to keep moving, using those muscles.
Yes. Yes. Because, and that's, coming back to trauma sensitive and trauma informed, it's being able to go through that process on a timeline that that person is comfortable with.
Hmm.
When we get to a point where it's too much, too many feelings, too much emotion, too large of an emotion,
Right, right.
giving them that space to be able to back off for a little bit, to take that time to process, to learn how to regulate it. Because every time we uncover a piece of that trauma, this is, this can be grief. This can be the process of grief, because people think, oh, you lost a child, lost a spouse, lost a friend, lost a family member, that it the grieving process is linear. It's really bad
Mhm.
when they first go away, and it gets a little smaller as the time since they've left us has been further apart. But the thing is that, just like with trauma, there's a new layer. And when we uncover a layer of it, it may be a bigger reaction than a different layer was. And giving people that space to say, not right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because healing is, like you said, healing's not linear, right? Healing goes like this. I call it
Mm-hmm.
a CVS receipt. There's always going to be something to address.
Those things are endless, endless.
But when you start adding in all of the other, past lives, timelines, all that kind of stuff, it can absolutely get overwhelming, and the CVS receipt can just go on and on and on. But it's important to note that even if you can't put a time limit on your own healing, right? Because when I healed my anxiety and depression, it only took 6 months. And that was 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. But when I was going through it, 6 months seemed like a very long time. And as soon as I thought that I was feeling better, more stuff would come up that would activate it.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Exactly.
those were those trauma response layers that you talk about. So I would, come up here and I'd have that trauma moment and start working on it, come down, I'd be down here. I'd be nice and level for, a few days, and then it would start to ramp up again. And that's when it made me think like, oh, maybe this isn't working. Maybe this trauma is not, why is this trauma not going away? Why is this, whatever it is, why is it not going away? And that's when I started to learn all of the layers, all of the times that I rethought of an event, I added a layer to whatever that event was. Or something got triggered and I didn't feel that emotion and it just got layered on top. which is why it's so important to learn how to manage and work through your emotions and not label them good or bad. They're just messages.
Yes.
They're just emotions. Sadness and anger are not bad emotions. We only think they don't feel good because we've been told they don't feel good.
Hmm.
But I tell you what, sometimes being mad can feel pretty good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because I will tell my clients, it's finding out what you need in that moment to
Yeah.
be able to hear the language of you and recognize what are the things that you need to do in that moment to shift yourself from wherever you are to where you want to be. And that could be driving around screaming your screaming the song that's on the radio, or it could be going into the med room and just drop an F bomb after F
Yep.
bomb. um, or it can be sitting in the closet and crying. It could also be going out in nature and going for a walk, or, you know, sending puppy videos to your bestie,
Hmm.
whatever it is that you need. We have to get better at being able to figure out, what do I need in
Right.
this moment?
Right. Yeah,
You
because
hear,
no one ever asked us those questions,
no, it was
right?
always, well, you've got to do this is what everybody else said, this is the best thing for you to do.
Hmm. Yep. Go to your room and think about it was one I always heard. Go to your room and think about what you're done.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, mine was always, what are people going to think? I'm like, what?
Ah,
I'm like, why do people care what jeans I'm wearing or what book I'm reading,
right.
or, you know, like, really, people got this much time to, pay attention to what Eva's doing?
They
They
used to
really
have more
care that
time to do
much?
that stuff.
Like, are you sure that this is that important to other people?
All right, so is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think is important for our listeners to understand about being trauma informed or being trauma sensitive?
More knowledge is always beneficial. uh, finding these resources, especially the resources that talk about invitational language, how to provide these spaces for people, for yourself, and for others, that's person centric and really geared towards evolving to the needs of the person.
Hmm.
um, because I see some different trainings where they say, okay, we've got to create buffers so that we don't ever trigger anybody, and that's just not freaking possible.
It's not because you know what that creates is that creates a fear that you're going to trigger someone into doing something that's going to harm them.
Right.
So it's a
Right.
fear
and
tactic.
and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be aware, and I think this is a for any energy worker, any body worker, anybody that works with clients that have um known reactions to triggers.
Right.
There is a professional responsibility to be aware and to make sure that if you're working with somebody that has known triggers, that we're not triggering them. But that's a more one-to-one
Hmm.
conversation versus a group setting. Um, but it's also, how do we be a place of assistance,
Right.
and then using our resources. So it's not up to me to fix somebody. I'm not here to fix people.
Mm-hmm. We're here to guide.
Exactly.
We're here to provide knowledge because whatever whatever created that trauma, I think I said it before, whatever created that trauma is not our fault, but it is our responsibility to heal from it. And so it's our
Absolutely.
responsibility to seek out the knowledge. Nobody's just going to come to us and give us the knowledge. We have to
And,
seek it out. And even if we go to somebody and we ask them and they give us an answer, it doesn't mean it's the answer for you,
I'm going to
right?
add one more layer to it because it might not even be the right time.
Right.
We
Yeah.
may already have had, somebody may have already told us exactly what we needed in order to be able to heal that next layer, but it wasn't the time for us. And so, yeah, sometimes we've got to hear something 7, 12, 147
Yep.
times
Yep.
before we're ready to do that work.
And it could also be who it's coming from, because we both know that our kids will do something that somebody else tells them to do that we've already told them to do 3 times.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I do it with my husband. He'll
Yeah.
he'll he'll be like, "You know what? I'm not even going to waste my breath." He's like, "Call your bestie and have this conversation with her because you'll actually listen to her." I'm like, "Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. You're right. Okay." But again, it took, and that's another, that's a whole other conversation
Yeah.
of how do you recognize where are the best places for you to get the information that you need.
That is a great question.
So this is sparking so many topics for
I
us.
know. I
Um,
know. Yeah,
and
because we've both gone through those periods where we were just, you go down the rabbit hole of Google to try to find what it is that is going to work for you. And 9 times out of 10, you're going through several things before you find the one that goes, well, that might actually work.
yes, yes. And the other thing too is being completely honest with our students and our clients in that this is not all rainbows and ponies.
Right. It's not. It's not. I think most people understand that it's not. I think most people actually come into come into healing with the expectation that it's going to be hard. And I like to sprinkle those rainbows and unicorns in
Yes,
because
yes,
because it is healing is such a serious endeavor. And it produces a lot of changes that can be very uncomfortable. Because those changes, you have that added fear of, well, gosh, if I change, are they still, are my friends and family still going to like me? Are they still going to want to be around me? And that brings up a lot of that people pleasing and other stuff that is linked, that is a trauma response.
yes.
People pleasing is a trauma response. If
Hyper
you've ever had
independence.
to
Yes,
consistently walk on eggshells, you want to make sure that everybody around you is happy so that you don't have to walk on eggshells. But you still walk on
yes.
eggshells because you want to make sure everybody's happy.
Yep, yep. And then here, this one blew my mind when I was doing some reading on stress responses and generational trauma. The state of our nervous system creates that people pleasing mode, and then we make career choices based off of our people pleasing, our people fixing
Yep. Yep.
mentality.
Yep. Absolutely. It's so funny you say that because my job before this was as an accounts payable manager, and I was literally doing 3 different jobs in one job because that was just part of my personality. I was always getting the job done, and so I'd always take on more jobs.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I went into the medical field literally trying to hold people together.
Mm-hmm.
And it is that moment was just like this one big, huge aha moment where
Yep.
I went, oh my gosh, everything that I sought out was because of the state of my nervous system.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be my co-host. I am so excited to move these conversations forward. I think right now the plan is for us to do 2 a month, and we'll see where that goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would love to hear the feedback from folks that watch this episode. What what sparked what sparked curiosity for them? What was the moment when they went,
Was there
holy
aha
crap?
moment? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So now we're gonna, because this is live, like there's no editing. So now I'm gonna take us to our outro. I have no music to play behind this, which is a little if you listen to my audio only podcast on Apple, it's always got the music behind the intros and outros. So this is definitely different and exciting all at the same time. Learning by the seat of our pants. But thank you so much for joining us on the Metamorphosis Project podcast, and we hope that today's episode has brought you some inspiration, some joy, and empowerment. Remember, transformation is an incredible journey, and every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to the life that you truly desire. Ava and I are honored to be a part of your healing journey, and we were here to remind you that self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. If this episode uplifted you, please subscribe, rate, click that like button, leave a review, and come back and support us next time, 2 weeks. Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Your support helps us to share this journey of hope, resilience, and joy with many more listeners. For more tips, support, and inspiration, come and visit us at designyourexistence.com and avazwellness.com for additional self-care resources and guidance. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and keep shining brightly because you are worth every bit of time and care that you spend on yourself. Thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Take care.
All right. Stop. Let's see if that worked. I don't know if that